So the story is told about the famous American painter James McNeill Whistler, who in the 1850s was at West Point, the U.S. military academy. One day, his instructor assigned him to draw a bridge. He responded by drawing a romantic stone bridge, complete with grassy banks and two small children fishing from it. "Get those children off that bridge," ordered the instructor. "This is an engineering exercise." So Whistler got the kids off the bridge, drew them fishing from the bank of the river instead, and resubmitted that drawing. The instructor was not pleased. "I told you to remove those children, get them completely out of the picture." Whistler's next version did indeed have the children completely out of the picture. They were drawn, buried under two small tombstones on the riverbank. That's right. Thank the gods, this is not the story of you and me over the past 12 years. When you called me in April of 2007 to be your settled senior minister, your charge to minister alongside you and inspire Unitarian Universalist aliveness among you did not come as an order, but as an invitation. For 12 years, I have tried to do that in the context of around 140 board meetings, 600-ish all-staff meetings, 1,800 staff one-on-one meetings, and who knows how many meetings with various committees and teams. In each of these administrative contexts, presenting a drawing of our Unitarian Universalist values and aspirations, which can be the bridge allowing us to cross troubled waters. And then there were the countless pastoral care moments where I have met with people in times of confusion and distress, and we have wondered together. We have prayed together about what the bridge might look like in their particular situation. And then there were the sermons, around 350 of them. It is said that any given preacher preaches only one message, really. Though over the course of years, they might present it in 1,000 different ways, employing 1,000 different anecdotes and stories in service to addressing 1,000 different topics. Only one message, really. Mine, I would say, is be fully and deeply alive here and now. I have preached that, as I have said, about 350 times now, and the bridges I have portrayed have featured all sorts of fanciful children, and you have received the eccentricity of my style and taste graciously and perhaps even with some interest. I have felt free to preach as my heart and conscience and aesthetic sensibility led me, and I thank you for your openness. I thank you that I have never had to protest by killing the children and burying them under tiny tombstones. Which is critical, because this is a spiritual community, and the children of all our hearts and of all our spirits are welcome. What we are all about is not some secular engineering exercise. Even in our most administrative, bean-counting moments, we cannot forget that we are about Unitarian Universalist aliveness here and now. We are about building sacred space. We are about building bridges over troubled waters. One of the pieces of liturgy we used in worship services several years back expresses this well. As it goes, as we conclude this time of prayers for our lives, let us all join hands. The hand in yours belongs to a person whose heart is sometimes tender, whose skin is sometimes thin, whose eyes sometimes fill with tears, whose laughter is a beautiful sound. That hand you are holding, it belongs to a person seeking wholeness and knows that you are doing the same today, tomorrow, and beyond. Let our hearts remain open. Let our voices stay strong, and let our hands remain outstretched in love. So may it be. Blessed be Ashe. Amen. More recently, our Embracing Meditation time invites us to put hands on hearts, feel the warm connection. Let love in this moment flow. Say to yourself silently, I will love myself, I will love others, and that love will heal the world. And then we conclude by inviting in the silence, which is an opportunity to bring awareness to that which is larger than ourselves. And as participants in a Unitarian Universalist worship, it is up to you what image you bring to mind, which represents the something larger that inspires you to grow in love and service. Let silence be our sanctuary now. We take in a big breath, then we exhale. We gently surrender to something larger than ourselves. We enter into the wise silence. Someone once asked me, why is the silence wise? And I don't remember what I said in reply. I could have quoted Albert Einstein, who said, I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, I swim in the silence, and the truth comes to me. So ask me that question again, and I will quote Albert Einstein. The silence is wise, and our world is so very noisy. Therefore, we must never forget that in essence, a congregation like this serves to be a countercultural force of revolutionary love, to invite individuals and families into this love so that their aloneness can be replaced by solidarity and community. Inviting people into revolutionary love that releases each and all to be more fully and deeply alive here and now, which is most definitely different than what the following story portrays. After 30 years of watching television, a husband says to his wife, let's do something really exciting tonight. Instantly, she conjures up visions of a big night on the town. Great, she says. What shall we do? He says, well, I thought we would switch chairs. Revolutionary love is not about just switching chairs. I think of my personal path for the past 12 years, and oh my God, it has not been at all about just switching chairs. My mother died in 2007, just months before I accepted this congregation's call. And if you are a member of the search team who brought me here, you know that we had to delay our pre-candidating weekend because that is when my mother died. I was divorced in 2012, after almost 22 years with my ex-wife, Laura. In 2013, I reverted back to my birth surname of Makar after 24 years of calling myself Anthony David, and I did this as a way of protesting against the craziness of my birth family. I began coaching figure skating in 2015, which was such a beautiful surprise for me. I began yoga in 2016, and that was yet another beautiful surprise. In 2017, I turned 50. Oh, what was that? Come on, you haven't said anything else but the... Oh! My daughter Sophia married in 2017. In 2018, I took up abstract painting, and just yesterday, a gallery in New York reached out to me to let me know they're interested in showing my work. And now I'm moving to Cleveland and starting a completely new chapter in my life, and I am excited and I am afraid all at once. It is just as the poet William Blake puts it, joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. But now I want you to think about the past 12 years of your life, all your joys, all your sorrows. Think they are the agitation that jars us out of sleepwalking. They are the wake-up calls that wake us up to remember who we want to be in this world. Very definitely, they are unsettling enough to give us good reason to seek out a congregation like this one, which can help us grow beyond what we have once been into souls that are wiser and more joyfully resilient and more thoughtful. What I will say about the past 12 years for myself is that all of this agitation has fed my sermons. People have so often said, what you said in your sermon, it was as if you were reading my mind. You spoke directly to me. But you must know that the real audience of every one of my sermons is me. Where I am in my living, I am trying the best I can to demonstrate one person's struggle with the truth in integrity. Just that. And I am grateful that through this authenticity, a bridge is built over troubled waters for us all. But beyond the personal, there is the collective path of this congregation over the past 12 years, which has also been full of joy and woe, and therefore of transformative experience. Together, we experienced the election of the very first African-American president in American history, and we witnessed his character and his statesmanship, and we rejoiced. Together, we navigated the Great Recession of 2008 and all the years after. Together, we have engaged police violence in communities of color. We have engaged poverty. We have engaged women's rights, trans rights, positive masculine identity, marriage, equality, Black Lives Matter, womanism, care of the earth, so many other issues. And together now we are grappling with the election of Obama's successor, whose values and behaviors are so at odds with our Unitarian Universalist values. It's not about political parties, folks. It's about UU values. I have called him by name. I have called him he who must not be named. I am struggling and will continue to struggle, and maybe you join me in that struggle, right? But we are doing it together. It is a collective journey we are on. Becoming a part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation means that you are plugged into realities and considerations that might be far larger than the ones you ever deal with at home. Realities and considerations that initially you may not know very much about. But you are challenged to become aware of all that you don't know, which, despite all your not knowing, still impacts you. All the way from 1963, while in the Birmingham jail, Dr. King writes, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men, all people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be unless you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be unless I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. And I first came face to face with the interrelated structure of reality when in seminary I met for the first time an openly gay man. And through him I realized I cannot be what I ought to be as a straight man until he can be what he ought to be as a gay man. And through him I have come to learn things about myself and about his world, and it has changed me forever. He is my brother. My life would not be the same without him. Unitarian Universalist spaces do that for us. Get us out of the smallness of narrow places and knowings get us out of privileged spaces and into spaces of struggle for the human worth and dignity of all. Dignity of the planet. Also, whoa. Whoa, okay. I want to ask, do you guys remember UUCA's Sustainability Initiative from 2008 to 2010? If you weren't here before that, well, obviously you're not going to remember it. If you do remember it, we need to talk. But 2008 to 2010, one of the things we did was invite congregants to take happiness pledges. Some were weekly, and we would introduce them in worship with the sound of a duck call. Yes, because it got people's attention, because it made them laugh, because it was cool.
There were many different things.
I know, but the duck call was the best.
They were all weird.
They were all weird.
Yeah.
Everyone was weird. Yeah. And of course, this was the run-up to the big ask, which was for each person to take a single year-long happiness pledge. One person committed to getting seriously involved with community gardening. Another person committed to riding their bicycle to work on a regular basis rather than driving. And for myself, I committed an entire year of not eating meat of any kind. I committed to pescatarianism. Y'all know what that is. So I ate fish, but now this was revolutionary for me because I came from a family of big meat eaters. And for the first time, I really got into vegetables. For the first time, I stopped feeling like some kind of cosmic victim if dinner happened to be vegetarian. It was good for me. It was good for the planet. Point is, together, we have been finding ways to get larger in our knowings and to engage the interrelated structure of existence. And so in 2014, at a time when it was unclear about how long it would take for marriage equality to come to Georgia, we just up and decided to take a stand as a religious people and affirm the sanctity of same-sex marriage, no matter what the law of the land actually had to say. What is legal is not necessarily what is right. Do we know that, UUCA? Yes. So we held a service at UUCA, which invited ministers from local UU congregations and other ministers from other denominations, and we affirmed marriage equality, and it was beautiful. And then in 2015, when marriage equality actually became the law of the land, we held another service in which same-sex couples were married in the house. That picture you saw of me blowing bubbles from the pulpit, well, that's how I felt after that service. That is where that comes from. It was so beautiful. And you may remember that that day, marriage equality was declared legal, June 26th, 2015. I was downtown there at the steps of the state capitol officiating same-sex weddings, and I was representing the faith and commitment of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Atlanta. No other congregation in all of Atlanta was represented down there, just this one. All of Atlanta through the news media, newspapers, televisions, they got to see what our faith stands up for. They got to see that. But something else big happened for us in 2015, our Remembering Selma event. 50 years ago from that year, Dr. King had broadcast far and wide his call for clergy of all faiths to join him and thousands of marchers in Selma, Alabama, to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge for racial justice. Literally hundreds of Unitarian Universalists did, together with concerned lay people. One of those ministers, the Reverend James Reeb, lost his life. And so did one of those lay people, Viola Liuzzo. They made the ultimate sacrifice. We remembered this powerful moment in civil rights here at UUCA by inviting icons of the civil rights movement to speak, together with the entire James Reeb family. They were in the house. They lit the chalice for that service. I will never forget that space. But actions speak louder. So on May 15th, 2016, after months of collective education and reflection, this congregation voted to affirm a resolution calling for UUCA to become more intentional about being an anti-racist, multicultural, anti-oppressive institution. And here's a little bit of that resolution. Whereas the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta has a proud heritage of anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism, or ARAMAC, work upon which we now build. Whereas prejudice remains a universal part of the human experience, which, combined with power and privilege, harms us in varying ways as individuals and a community. Whereas the journey is often confusing and the work often deeply painful, our principles and our theological tradition compel us to stay on this journey and continue the work of ARAMAC. Whereas with humility, we acknowledge that we will err in this work and that none of us will ever be done with this journey. And whereas we are determined to continue in this work, confident that by doing so we will deepen spiritually and thrive as a fully engaged, relevant faith community that brings healing to this world. Therefore, recognizing that actions are more powerful than words, UUCA resolves to. And together we have been resolving and acting and engaging the interrelated structure of reality. And the work continues. Someone dare convince me that a community like this isn't needed in this world. Someone dare convince me right now. We need more communities like this, and we need to become more involved in communities like this because this community is a community like this. Do you hear me? Transformative love bringing us into greater aliveness than we ever thought possible. And there is one more instance of this I will mention today. So many things to say about a ministry that has lasted 12 years long that we have shared together in partnership. But this one last thing I will mention started with a certain sermon I preached on February 2nd, 2014, entitled, What It Means to Move. Our Unitarian Universalist headquarters in Boston had themselves just moved from their historic site at 25 Beacon Street to 24 Farnsworth Street, and the sheer seeming impossibility of this ever happening made me wonder out loud in your presence if a similar, seemingly impossible sort of thing might happen for us. After all, the Cliff Valley Way building had long been rendered practically invisible to the larger world by the construction of the I-85 overpass. And it was a tough location to find for those who were not already part of the club. Yeah? Other problems included the stadium seating of the sanctuary, which was an accessibility nightmare which we could not wake up from. Also, water leakage in the basement, which had been a problem from the very beginning. Did you know that? From the very beginning, and it continued to be a problem no matter how much money we threw at it. And so we were struggling with mold in the basement, which meant that it knocked out all the classroom space there for our children and youth. It was a mess. And also, the $1 million expense it would take to repair the parking lot there and other items, which would tie us to a building that was beloved but remained very flawed. I wondered aloud in your midst what it will be like for us to move. I said, we have to be sure our building is working for us and for our community. This place is a cradle for our dreams, a workshop of our common endeavor. It is home. We love it. I love it. But remember this, it is our fifth home, not the first. It need not be the last. We the people are the congregation, not the building. Mission trumps building. UUA headquarters is moving into the Innovation District. It is time for us here in Atlanta to follow their lead and do the same. That's where I ended. This was the sermon in all my 12 years that riled the most people up. Guarantee it. My ministry among you has never been simply about switching chairs. I hope and pray that you keep the spirit of boldness alive among you. If you look no higher than the floor, you will never see how well stocked your pantry is. Live into your abundance. UUCA. Be fully and deeply alive. Let the children of your spirits and your hearts come out to play. Be fully and deeply alive here. Build bridges over troubled waters. Be fully and deeply alive here and now. Amen.
Amen.